Good evening and welcome to the Channel studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Experts are predicting next week's US election could have a higher turnout than any in history, as more than 70 million Americans have already cast their ballots.
And some bad news just came out on Biden.
Nearly 48 million of the 70 million votes already cast have been by post, but Donald Trump and some of his supporters have repeatedly tried to undermine the validity of postal voting. Trump will hold 2 rallies today in Arizona, a battleground state where polls suggest his rival has the edge. Joe Biden will give a speech near his home in Delaware on his plans to combat COVID-19. According to experts, the huge number of ballots means they could take days or even weeks to count. Meanwhile, hundreds of protesters in Philadelphia have marched through the city for a second night, demanding racial justice after police fatally shot a black man. Officials say 30 officers were hurt during the first night of clashes and have accused protesters of looting and ransacking businesses during the second night of unrest. The family of Walter Wallace say he was suffering a mental health crisis when officers opened fire on him, but have called for people not to inflame the situation.
And I don't condone no violence, tearing up the city, looting up the stores, and all this chaos going. And I would feel like, is everybody having any respect for my family and my son to stop this violence and chaos what's going on in the city?
Countries in Europe are continuing to tighten restrictions as cases of COVID-19 increase. In Germany, Chancellor Angela Merkel is set to decide with state leaders whether to shut bars, leisure centres and hotels to halt the rise in infections. France is considering the extent of a planned 4-week lockdown, but reports suggest schools will stay open. Meanwhile, in the UK, calls are growing for the government to put in place another lockdown after 22,885 new cases were confirmed on Tuesday and 367 deaths. Turkey has vowed to take legal diplomatic actions over a cartoon of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in the French magazine Charlie Hebdo. State media say Turkish prosecutors have launched an official investigation into the satirical magazine. Tensions between France and Turkey are high after President Emmanuel Macron pledged a tougher stance against radical Islam. Mr. Erdogan has called on Turks to boycott French goods and said Mr. Macron needed mental checks. The European Union has said that although voting in Guinea was calm, questions remain as to the credibility of the result. It said it had taken note of the provisional results that announced President Alpha Conde's win, here being celebrated by supporters. The EU said it supported the diplomacy efforts of West Africa's regional bloc ECOWAS, the African Union and the UN to restore confidence. A delegation of mediators is in the country and has met various political actors, including opposition leader Celo Dalien Diallo, who has been prevented from leaving his house. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa is self-quarantining after a guest at a dinner he attended later tested positive for COVID-19. The president is not showing symptoms and will perform his duties remotely, that's according to his office. Mr. Ramaphosa is the latest world leader forced to self-quarantine because of the outbreak. Typhoon Malave, with winds of up to 135 kilometers per hour, has slammed into Vietnam's central coastline, killing 2 and leaving dozens missing. Trees were uprooted and roofing and fences were dislodged by the strong winds. 26 fishermen were missing after their boats sank in their bid to return to shore, with the government saying 2 Navy ships were mobilised to find them. Some 250,000 military personnel were deployed or placed on standby ahead of the typhoon. Firefighters in Southern California are struggling to contain the Silver Ado fire, one of 2 explosive wind-whipped wildfires that have forced the evacuation of over 80,000 homes. Video filmed from the Foothill Ranch community in Lake Forest showed the blaze sweeping through hills and bushes. Charred landscape could be seen in more footage taken on Tuesday after fires burned through the area. More than 750 firefighters using 14 helicopters have managed to contain only 5% of the fire, which has grown up to 13,354 acres. And finally, Kim Kardashian West has been accused of being tone deaf after spending her 40th birthday on a private island with a large group of family and friends. The reality star said the trip followed 2 weeks of multiple health screens and asking everyone to quarantine. Posting photos of the event on Twitter, Kim said she was humbly reminded of how privileged my life is. While some fans praised her candour, others said the trip was insensitive to families separated by COVID-19. And that's your international news around the world in 5. And now back to the channel studios in Lagos.